Doing Unit 7, Lesson 1, which is graphing linear inequalities. Okay, I wrote some notes at the top of your paper or my paper that I want you to add to yours. Beside dotted lines, I put open circle. And beside solid lines, I put closed circle. And I referenced those because earlier in the semester, when we were solving and graphing one variable inequalities, we had circles, okay? Opened or closed circles. And now we are not going to have circles. We're going to have lines. As soon as you have two variables introduced, your x-axis and your y-axis, at that point, we then start having lines, okay? Also, what is different because we have a y variable is our shading. Because the y-axis goes up and down, then our shading must go up and down. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at example number 1 here. And I am going to skip part 2, okay, temporarily. I'm going to do just the first part of both examples 1 and 2. So, step number 1, make sure that the equation or inequality is in slope-intercept form. And it is. Okay, so 1 is y equals mx plus b. That's the form it has to be in. Step 2 is identify your m and your b. So m equals 2, b equals -3. Okay. And then let's go ahead and plot the points for this line. So if b is -3, there it is. And then my slope is 2, which is 2 over 1. Okay, so rise 2, run 1, put a point, rise 2, run 1, rise 2, run 1. And then I want us to continue this line all the way across. And I'm going to leave it exactly where it is, okay? Let's jump over to example 2 now. Okay, so let's do steps 1 and 2. Is this in slope-intercept form? And the answer is yes, so I'm going to go ahead and check that. Step 2, identify the slope of 2/3 and the y-intercept, which is at -1. And then let's go ahead and put our points. So my y-intercept is -1. My slope is rise 2, run 3, put a point. Rise 2, run 3, put a point. I want to continue this in both directions. So I can also go down 2, left 3, down 2, left 3. Okay. So everything that I have so far done in both examples 1 and 2 is very familiar to me from graphing lines, okay, graphing linear functions. Now what we're about to do is introduce the part that is unique to inequalities, okay? We have to make two decisions whenever we're graphing an inequality. The first decision that we make is the line going to be dotted or solid? So if we look up above here, okay, what is the difference between the inequality that makes the line dotted or solid? And just like it was with the circles, we need to look at, does it have the line underneath? If it has the line underneath, then the line will be solid. If there is no line underneath, then it will be dotted. Okay, so no line underneath. I think I spelled that right. I don't know. Okay, so I'm just going to circle that. Is there a line? Yes, there is. So it's going to be solid. So let's go ahead and create that solid line. Okay. Number 2, circle underneath. Is there a line there? The answer is no. So this is dotted. Okay. Now we are ready to go to part two, okay? Shading up or down. If we're going to shade up, we should have a greater than or equal to symbol. If we're shading down, it should be less than or equal to. All right? So this is a less than. And I want to remind you that if we drew an arrow, this is facing the left, okay? And you could say left could help you remember less than. All right? So when it is less than, we need to shade down, and we will need to begin at the y-intercept, which is right here, and then I want you to draw a line straight down the y-axis. And then we're going to shade all this in here. Okay. Um, let's look at number 2. Oops, I forgot to actually draw my dotted line. Let me do that now. Okay, so there's my dotted line. And now let's determine, is this line going to be shaded up or down? Okay, so that's my inequality. If I create an arrow, it's going to the right, which is greater than. So I will shade up. So go to your y-intercept, draw a line on the y-axis going up, and then shade in everything up there. Okay, so that is how we graph a line, determine if it is dotted or solid, and then do our shading for an inequality. Now let's go to part 2 of both of these examples. Which of the following points are in the solution set? So what I want us to do is to plot all the points, okay? And then I'm going to label them as well. So over 5, up 3 is A. Left 1, up 2 is B. So A is definitely in the shaded area where you see red. So A is a good point. B is definitely outside of that shaded region. Okay. C, positive 3 is right there on top of the line. Okay. When it is right on top of the line, we do need to be careful. So I'm going to go back up to the top of my paper and I'm going to add another note. Okay. What did it mean back when we had open circles and closed circles? Okay. If I had an open circle, let's say x is greater than 2, it meant that my solution was all the numbers that are bigger than 2, but 2 was not included in it. Okay. If it was a closed circle, x is greater than or equal to 2, then it would mean that the 2 is included. And it does mean the same thing here. Okay. So if I have a solid line, points on the line are included. On the line. Okay, so if there's a line underneath, points on the line are included in the solution set. Okay, if there is no line underneath, it means points on the line are not included in the solution set. Okay, points on line not included, and I just kind of shorthanded that. Okay, not included. So in this example number one, is the C going to be included? Yes or no? Well, because this is a solid line, then the answer will be yes. Okay. And then the last point is 0, -2, which is option D, and that is outside of the solution set. I want you to try to determine which of these 4 points in example number 2 are going to be included in the solution set. And then I also want you to keep in mind that the solution set is everything in this shaded region, even numbers that you can't see, okay? So if I had an ordered pair that was X is 0, Y is a million, that would go straight up the Y axis. That is going to be included, okay? So pause this video while you determine which of these points is in the solution set. Alrighty, so I have gone ahead and eliminated A so far, and I've included B and D. Those are very obvious, but I need to stop and think about C. Okay, C falls directly on top of my line. Is this included? Yes or no? Okay, well, this is a dotted line. Because it is a dotted line, it is not included. Okay, so C is not included in the solution set because it falls on top of the dotted line. Alrighty, let's take a look at example number 3. This is going to be very direct. We don't need to determine solutions or anything like that. Okay. All right, step number 1, make sure that it is in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to have to do some work here. Not very much though. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Y is less than -x plus 3. Part 2, I'm going to identify the slope as -1/1, the y-intercept as 3. And now I'm going to create the graph out of that. So y-intercept is at 3, slope is -1, right 1. Or when I'm done with these points, you could go positive up 1, left, up left, all the way across. Okay? Alrighty, now I need to look at the inequality. Okay, so is there a line under here? The answer is no, so it's dotted. Okay, so let's make that dotted line. You're welcome to create dotted lines however you would like, as long as it is clear that it's dotted. Okay, second, I need to do my shading. So let's look at this inequality. It is going that way. If I draw an arrow, it's going left. Left means less. So when I'm up and down on the y-axis, the numbers less than 3 are the ones that are down. Okay. And then I'm going to do my shading all down here. And I'm finished. Let's take a look at example number 4. So I need to put it into slope-intercept form. Okay, so let's do that. Divide everything by this -2. So I get y 5 over -2 and then -1. And then my inequality right here. Let me add a note, okay? Right there, I just divided by a negative number. So I will need to apply the golden rule. Remember, the golden rule says whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to rotate that inequality, okay? All right, now I'm ready to identify my slope and my y-intercept, and then I'm going to plot them on the graph. So -1, okay, I'm going to go up 5 and then left 2, Or remember, you can go down 5 and then right 2. Okay, so there are my points. Now I'm going to determine solid or dotted. There is definitely a line there, so this will be solid. And my shading, this is going to the right, which is greater than. So I'm going to shade up. So the numbers greater than -1 are this way. And that's it. Great job. What I'd like for you to do is to practice number 5 on your own, okay? So pause the video. All right, so here's my solution to number 5. Just take a minute if you need to pause the video and glance through my work or double check that yours is plotted correctly. The important key features here are just making sure that you can determine if the line is dotted or solid and if the shading is up or down. Okay, just also while keeping in mind some old things that we've learned a while back, the golden rule, rearranging an equation into slope-intercept form, and then graphing the lines, okay? All right, let's do number 6 together. And number 6 is a little different. I want to start out by flip-flopping the entire thing, okay? When you flip-flop, everything on the left goes on the right, and everything on the right goes on the left. And then the inequality in the middle changes directions, okay? We also learned a while back that it is okay to completely flip-flop an inequality as long as everything gets changed over. And I did that just as a very easy way to get my y variable on the left. And once it's there, now I can just solve this like normal. Okay, so y is less than or equal to -1/3 x plus 4, where this is my slope and this is my y-intercept. Okay, so that was the only new thing that I added there, was just a reminder of what is flip-flop. You could have just subtracted the y and then subtracted the 4 and then divided by -1 and remember to do your golden rule. But I just think that the flip-flop method is a little easier to do right up front when your y is on the right-hand side. Okay? Alrighty. Um, let's go ahead and graph that now um, before we move on to number 7. Okay, so I plotted my slope and my y-intercept. I do have a line underneath, so that's solid. Okay, and then my inequality symbol is facing the left, which is less, okay? So less than 4 is down this way. And I'm finished. Very good. Okay, now what we're going to go look at are some assessment items, okay? You won't be able to, as a constructed response item, actually be able to graph an inequality the way that we just did in our lesson. So what you will usually end up doing is choosing an option from your multiple choice, okay? So it's important that we know what to look for. And I'm going to narrow it down to 4 key features, okay? The key features I'm going to look for are still going to be, okay, is there a line underneath? And that is going to tell me dotted or solid, okay? In this case, it tells me dotted. So that's still important to know. Now, if I look at A, B, C, and D, all of them have dotted lines. So that doesn't help me in this situation, but it can sometimes. The second thing I'm going to look for is the inequality. The inequality is facing left, so the shading will be less or down, okay? So in A, the shading is not going down like it should. So it's not A, okay? In B, the shading is also not going down like it should. But in C and D, the shading is going down, okay? So let's take a look at what is different between, so I'm going to mark out options A and B. What is the difference between parts A and B? I'm sorry, C and D. C has a positive slope and D has a negative slope. Okay, so that's another key feature to look for is the slope. If we go back and we look at this problem, my slope is 5 and there's no sign in front of it, which means that it is positive. So I'm looking for a positive slope, which is going to be C. Okay, so mark out option D. My answer is C. Very good. Let's try number 8. Okay, for number 8, before I can determine how to graph this line, I am going to need to put this into slope-intercept form. So let's subtract 5x from both sides. And what I have now is y is less than or equal to negative 5x. Okay, and now let's start looking at our key features. So this tells me I will have a solid line, which means that it cannot be C because that's dotted. Okay. This tells me that it is left, which is less than, which is down. Okay. So it cannot be A because it's not being shaded down. What about B? Yep, it can be B. And D, yes, it can be B. And then now let's look at the slope, okay? M equals negative 5. Which one of these has a negative slope? So B and D both have a negative slope. M equals negative. M equals negative. So what is the last thing that you could think to look at? Um, and it's not very obvious in this particular example, but the fourth thing that you could look for is what is B equal to? Remember, B is your y-intercept. What is the y-intercept for this problem? And the answer is 0. Okay, so here the y-intercept is actually below 0 at approximately negative 1. In this one, the y-intercept does cross the 0. Okay, so it cannot be B, it has to be D. It had all 4 things correct. Okay, alrighty. Now what we're going to do is one is going to be a spiral back. So number 9 is a spiral back. And then number 10 is going to be a look forward. Okay, in how we have used inequalities and how we will move into using inequalities. Okay, so number 9 says Melissa wants to spend no more than $300 on school clothes. She spends $75 on a coat and then wants to buy some sweaters. that are on special for $10 each. Solve the inequality to find the greatest number of sweaters that she can buy. So this is a spiral back, and what we're going to need to do is to take the inequality that they give me and solve it. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to start by subtracting 75, and then I get 10s is less than or equal to 225. Divide by 10, and s is less than or equal to 22.5. Okay, so 22.5 is not an option, so give me a number less than, so this is less than 22.5, okay? Well, 23 is too big, and 30 is also too big. I have two numbers that are less than 22.5. But the actual question says find the greatest number of sweaters that she can buy. So the greatest is going to be B, 21, because 22 is greater than 21. Okay. So that is our answer for number 9, and that was our spiral back. Now we're going to take a look forward. Looking forward is going to use what we have learned today, and that is putting an inequality into slope-intercept form. So let's do that here. No matter what form it starts out looking like, we can just rearrange it to get the y by itself. Okay, and then divide by -3 everywhere. And y is less than, actually, I need to apply the golden rule here because I divided by a negative. Okay. So the golden rule is going to rotate that inequality. All right, and then I'm just going to do a very quick, you used to learn once upon a time when you're dividing two fractions, okay? That's where some of you are trying to tell me keep, change, flip. Keep the first one, change division to multiplication, flip your second fraction over. You want to do the reciprocal, okay? And then multiply straight across. 3 divided by -6 is going to give me -1/2. That is going to be my slope. Okay, x. And 6 divided by -3 is -2. So I'm going to erase now this scratch work for my fractions. I just wanted to remind you of how to do that so that you know where I get my slope from. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to identify my m and my b for both of these equations. And I am going to graph them both on the same coordinate plane. Okay. So let's start with the first one. +2 is my y-intercept, and my slope is +1/2. And I'm just going to go all the way across. Okay. And then this line is going to be dotted. Okay. So let's just refer to this whole thing as the red line. Okay. This line is going to be dotted. And I will shade down because it's facing the left. And so I'm just going to do some quick lines here. Okay. All right. I'm going to refer to this line as the blue line. And then let's go ahead and graph it. So my y-intercept is at -2. And then my slope is a -1/2 x. Okay. So down 1, right 2. Down 1, right 2. all the way across. You can also go up one left, up one left. Okay, this line is going to be a solid line because there is the little bar underneath. And this is facing the right, which means it's greater than. So this shading will go directly up and down. Okay. So if you have a highlighter to do the shading with a problem like this where there are two inequalities sharing a graph, I think highlighters are easier to see what's going on without these crazy lines. But I have a smartboard, so this is kind of the best that I can demonstrate it for us up here. But we now are going to go ahead and answer some questions just like we did in examples 1 and 2 at the start of our notes, okay? The first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the location that these two inequalities intersect? And so the word intersect is not something that we've really discussed in this class, but if you think about where two roads intersect, okay, that would be at like a stop sign or a red light, and it is where these two lines or roads cross over each other, okay? So where do these two lines do that? If you're not exactly sure, you can plot all four of these points. Okay, so let's do 0, positive 2. Did the blue line cross over right there? Okay, the answer is no, so that's not it. What about B? Positive 4, 0. Did the blue line cross there or did the red line cross there? And the answer is no. Okay. Negative 4, 0 is right here. And I do see the solid blue line and the dotted red line cross right there. Okay, and then I'm just going to check my point D, 0, negative 2. And that is on the blue line, but it's not on the red line. Okay, so it's not there either. So it's got to be a point on both the red line and the blue line, okay, which is right there. The very last thing that we're going to do is we're going to use these same 4 points. We're going to list a point that is included in the shared shaded region and one point that is not. Okay? All the points in the shared shaded region fall outside of that red line because it's dotted and on top of this blue line because it's solid. Okay? And so the one point that I see that was included in here is B. So B is included. And then finally, one point that is not included would be A. A is not included because it is on the dotted line. Okay, so A. Oh, I'm sorry, and I should have put the ordered pairs, not the letters. So 4, comma 0 and 0, comma 2. All right. What I want you to do now is to go ahead and complete the practice assignment that is posted to Google Classroom.